Recording is in progress. Well, welcome everybody to the Climate Center's July Business Breakfast. Once again, we're meeting in virtual space as we approach hopefully what will be the end of the pandemic, get everybody vaccinated. We hope in the fall to be meeting in person. Stay tuned for more details about that. If everything goes as planned, we hope to see all of those of you in the North Bay at our fall business breakfast sometime in September, location TBD. Although we do plan to still continue to do work like this online and in the virtual space as we become a statewide and hybrid organization. There'll be lots of opportunities for those of you in other parts of the state to continue to engage with us, the many members of our business network, and all the other good folks who are going to be here today. I'd like to start with a brief presentation to thank some of our sponsors and give you a sense of what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to share my screen and begin this presentation. Once again, this is the Climate Center's Business Breakfast. We're very happy you could be here. A lot of you know our work, and many of you are familiar with Climate Safe California, our groundbreaking and I would say innovative policy platform to get us to net zero, net negative emissions by 2030. We are super excited about how that policy platform is going. We have some specific legislation in regard to this that's going to be talked about by Barry Vesser in just a couple minutes. He'll give you some updates on some of what we're working on in Sacramento. Many of you on this call have already endorsed Climate Safe California. If you have not, we urge you to do so both as individuals and on behalf of your companies and organizations. Barry will drop a link to endorsement into the chat. And I should point out that since we last met, hundreds more people, organizations, and businesses have endorsed Climate Safe California, including elected officials, city and governmental authorities, businesses, including many of you, Guayaquil, Enphase. Thank you, Jason. Enphase's endorsement means a lot to us. Y Green, Traditional Medicinals, and many others. So if you'd like to join them, please go to the link that Barry just dropped in the chat and you can be part of this incredible movement. I also want to take a moment to thank our co-hosts at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. Sorry for the slightly blurry logo, Ahmad. It's the best one I could come up with this morning, but we really appreciate Silicon Valley Leadership Group's joining us here today and helping bring some of the folks from your region and some of your members into this meeting. I want to take a moment really to thank our sponsors, without whom none of this would be possible. Somo Village, which has recently stepped up to a much higher level of sponsorship, Calpine Energy Solutions, Bloom Energy, all of our Diamond and Emerald sponsors, Redwood Credit Union, Hobo Wine Company, Jackson Family Wines we'll be hearing from later, Renewable America, Enphase, Y Green, Soil and Company. You can see from this list that Climate Safe California and the Climate Center are not about one sector of the economy. We are about every sector of the economy, including energy production and distribution, finance, Summit State Bank, food production, Guayaquil, Recology, Sonoma Marin, a big supporter of ours, River City Bank, LabCon manufactures medical testing equipment, Terra Verde Energy, Redwood Hill Farms, they make cheese. Climate matters to them too. Bad climate, not good for the goats. So we're very excited at this incredible array of companies that support us. Cleantech Communications, Blue Planet Energy, Strauss Family Creamery, Amy's Kitchen, Mission Capital, Williams Geo Adventures, Sonoma Raceway, Ken Roberts Financial Pathways, even radio stations, real estate agents, and others all joined to support the Climate Center. And for that, we thank you all. At the core of what we do, though, it's about policy, policy, policy. And so I would like to invite my colleague, Barry Vesser, if I can just stop my sharing here, give me just a moment. I would like to invite my colleague, Barry Vesser, to give us a few minutes update on legislative efforts currently underway in Sacramento, because this is a key part of what we do on behalf of you all. So Barry, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Duran, and good morning, everyone. So glad you could be here with us. And as Duran said, our mission is to get speed and scale greenhouse gas emissions reduction solutions in place through policy. And we have been working intently in Sacramento the last, well, actually for many years, but definitely in a more concentrated way in the last couple of years. And I just wanted to give you a quick update. We're going to make this a regular part of our business breakfast, because one of the things we want to do is engage businesses more in climate and clean energy policy. This is going to affect our economy going forward, we think, in a very positive way, and we want you to be informed and we want you to take action when appropriate. So your feedback on this session afterwards, you can email me or Duran, it is greatly appreciated, and I will try and keep it fairly brief. So I don't know if any of you have seen an article that Aaron Cantu published in Capital in Maine. It was entitled, "Why Big Climate Bills Keep Dying in the California Senate." And it explains the politics and the impasse around meaningful climate legislation that we're experiencing in Sacramento right now. Essentially, it's an alliance between the California Building and Construction Trades Association, which is a conglomeration of unions across California, many of which are involved in the fossil fuel industry, and the Western States Petroleum Association. This together, a number of bills have died in the legislature in the last year and a half. AB 345 would have set setbacks from oil production, for safety reasons. That went down last year. This year, SB 467, which would have banned fracking and some other kinds of oil extraction activities, and also said safety setbacks went down. In a bill that we put a lot of energy into, SB 582, which would have been the first bill in the US, I believe, to have set an ambitious target for net negative emissions, also went down. Actually, I should say, that's a 2-year bill, so it was put on hold, and we hope it will come back next year and be strengthened, and we will certainly have a strengthened partnership to pursue it. But in essence, the building trades have both money to give, and they have great power. They organize their members. And I do want to say that the building trades are not the enemy. This is a legitimate union who's just trying to protect their members, and we have to find a way to meet them where they live, to really help meet the interests of their memberships, and that's going to cost money. I'm not going to go into the details of what that policy solution might look like right now. I just want you to know that that is part of the landscape in the legislature, and we do think there's a solution, but it's not a quick fix. And with that, I'm going to just focus on a few bills. There's still a number of bills on climate and energy policy that are alive in the legislature at this point, but I'm going to focus on a few because of time, and these are ones that we think are particularly important. The first is a bill sponsored by the Climate Center, SB 99. This is a bill from Senator Dodd, and it's called the Community Energy Resilience Act. It will require the California Energy Commission to develop and implement a technical assistance and grant program to support local governments in developing community resilience plans, prioritizing the states to support the most vulnerable communities first. And this will help communities deal with both planned and unplanned outages. Right now, I'm sure you're all aware what's happened in the last couple of years of a lot of diesel generators have been bought all up and down the state of California. This is moving us in the wrong direction, away from our climate goals. This bill will help us actually plan to use clean energy resources to keep critical facilities up and running, and do other kinds of integration inside the community that will maximize the benefits from solar, storage, and wind and other kinds of renewable energies. Next bill, I should say, so that bill passed the Senate floor 40-0. It's now in the Assembly. It's passed out of committee, and it's heading to appropriations. Once it gets through appropriations, assuming that that's the case, it will be on the floor of the Assembly for a vote. AB 284 is a bill by Robert Rivas. And this bill would require the California Air Resources Board, as they update the scoping plan, to take specified actions and set actual dates and climate goals and milestones for sequestration on natural working lands. This is very important for those of you who aren't aware of Climate Safe California's stance on natural sequestration. It's quite aggressive. We're hoping to get to 100 million metric tons of sequestration by 2030. And that means we need to start now and get the state agencies lined up to figure out how can we get there. So this bill's an important step in that direction. Likewise, Senator Skinner, in her SB 27, has a bill on sequestration that would create a California carbon sequestration and climate resilience project registry. And what this will do is have a list of eligible but unfunded projects, which they then may be funded by public or private entities in order to help mitigate California's greenhouse gas emissions. It will also set sequestration targets at the California Air Resources Board. So another very important bill. So as I said, there are a number of other bills. I'm not going to talk about them now, but I will tell you that if you go to our website and you go under work, you will see legislation, and we list a lot of the bills, almost all the bills that have anything to do with climate, and we give you their status. All of these bills now are in appropriations and have a chance for a floor vote. So they all have a chance to become law. Probably the most significant things, though, that have happened in the last few months in Sacramento are in the governor's office, or originated out of the governor's office, at least you could say. On Friday, Governor Newsom directed the California Air Resources Board to model a pathway to carbon neutrality by 2035. This is 10 years ahead of the state's current climate goal. He also directed the California Public Utilities Commission to work to establish a more ambitious greenhouse gas emissions target for electricity procurement by 2030, hopefully stepping up the state's pace of achieving zero carbon electricity. Just hours before the governor's announcement, the Climate Center and 25 other California climate and environmental organizations sent a letter to the California Air Resources Board urging them to examine a wider range of accelerated climate action scenarios, including achieving net negative emissions by 2030. And this is really based on the latest science. And of course, what we've all been experiencing is impacts, 121 degrees in British Columbia, 118 degrees in Siberia. I think we know that we're beyond a new normal here. We are in a world of uncertainty. So we're really grateful to the governor for his actions. They are quite laudable and in the right direction. I have to say that we don't believe they're nearly enough for California to reassert its climate leadership. We need to do much more. And in passing, I have not talked about the biggest story of all in Sacramento in terms of climate investment, which is the record $11.8 billion in the budget earmarked for climate, because our featured speaker, Dr. Mitra, will cover that in detail. So thank you for your attention. I am now, it is my pleasure. Well, actually, before I introduce, let me just thank Silicon Valley Leadership Group in general for hosting us. And for those of you who are not aware of them as an organization, they are a powerhouse in Silicon Valley, organizing support in the business community for climate and clean energy policy and innovation for years. They represent 350 business members in Silicon Valley and take an active role in supporting legislation in their members' interest, as is broadly defined. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you their CEO, Ahmad Thomas, who brings nearly 18 years of experience working both in nonprofits, government, and business. As CEO, Thomas is charged with leading Silicon Valley leadership group to address racial justice, equity, and opportunity with its 350 member businesses in an effort to strengthen Silicon Valley and America's competitiveness, economic strength, and innovation, while also benefiting employees, their families, and the residents of the community. Before coming to Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Ahmad was a director at Barclays Investment Bank. Thank you for joining us, Ahmad. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Barry. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate the warm welcome. And Barry, that was a great overview of a lot that's going on in Sacramento. I'm going to morph my remarks a little bit, maybe go higher level on what we've seen in DC the past few days. I want you all to know a little bit more about me, as I'm new on this job 10 months in. And also going forward, I hope to really have a close relationship working together here, where I can be a resource, our incredible team can be a resource, working together with all of you. And before I dive into that, I'd like to acknowledge the important work of the Climate Center and all of your members. I truly am honored to be here today. I'm a native Californian, small town guy, military family. I'm born and raised in Lompoc, California. I'm raising my family here on the peninsula. Your work decarbonizing the state's electrical system matters deeply to me, my family, my kids, future generations, and it's really, really important stuff. So again, thank you. And really look forward to hearing from Dr. Mitra later today about the state's budgetary priorities around climate change, adaptation, and resilience. So, Barry, you gave background around us at SVLG. We've been so fortunate with Carl Guardino's leadership over decades, being early in adapting, and I think really advocating strongly for climate here in Silicon Valley at the state and federal level. We've got a great team with Mike Milkey and Tim McRae, who are longtime staffers, extremely well versed on these issues. And climate has really been a core policy and programmatic issue for us for many years. I'm new, 10 months in. I'm an investment banker. This is a different space for me, as you touched on a little bit, Barry. And I hope that I bring a certain zest and set of experiences coming from the private sector to really operationalize some of this change, and in particular around green finance, green infrastructure, the ESG movement we see with large institutions and investors, really add value to our members around that, as I have firsthand experience with those deals. So looking at kind of what we've got near term in terms of our high level priorities, looking at long term, where we need to be around climate, where our companies, executives in Silicon Valley have us very focused, I'd say a couple things. First, today it's looking at operating costs, how our businesses structure their budgets. Obviously, climate mitigation, managing that risk comes with a cost. When we talk about business competitiveness, really my core mission at SVLG, cost structures, operating budgets, putting our companies in a position to succeed, all of those are aligned and all of those are directly tied to our climate. Longer term, we hope Silicon Valley's response to climate leads the way for a resilient, equitable future for literally the world to follow. And the leadership group, we've got a broad array of interests when we look at our membership related to climate, clean energy, renewables. With clean energy, we've got rooftop solar, energy efficiency, several EV manufacturers, charging infrastructure, demand response, utility scale, renewable research, et cetera. The large users, end users of energy like Cisco, IBM, Facebook, as well as the investor-owned utility PG&E. So we've got a pretty broad and diverse set of membership who are very engaged around this set of issues. Our history, as I said, around climate is deep. We're the first business association to support AB 32. The set of issues here we understand is a fight and a conversation that has been going on for quite some time, and I hope we bring some gravitas to that discussion, given how early on we kind of recognize this threat with our leadership and have taken action at a policy level. So a couple things that I'd share here in more substance. First, just sharing some of the takeaways from the summit we had a couple weeks ago. Very significant discussion we had in Silicon Valley on climate. We had Secretary John Kerry, we had EPA Administrator Michael Regan, we had several state leaders, we had Gina McCarthy from the White House. What we heard from Gina McCarthy was that Silicon Valley companies really must play a critical and central role in tackling the climate crisis. Secretary Kerry emphasized that net zero transition represents the greatest market transformation and greatest market opportunity he sees around technology since the Industrial Revolution, right? So when we talk about business competitive, when we talk about VC investment, when we talk about technology, and the potential there, it's enormous, as we all know, from a private sector standpoint. And EPA Administrator Reagan and I had a great interview. It's up on YouTube, but check it out if you'd like. And we can share that as well. But we talked about environmental justice and what the Biden administration is doing, what our companies can be doing to help address the needs of communities of color that have been disproportionately impacted and particularly vulnerable to climate impacts. The big issue that we see, it's no news to any of you, is AJP, which we heard about from federal officials and which we know is moving right now very quickly in DC. And there are many really important clean energy and climate related components to that bill that we support. Section 25D, Section 48 on the solar investment tax credit, the full suite of tax credits for clean energy are extremely important to our companies. Additionally, we support provisions around transportation electrification and charging infrastructure. But all this boils down to, ultimately, how are you going to pay for this? You're talking about multiple trillions of dollars, and I'm not going to sit here and say I believe it's a good idea for taxes to go up at this time on our companies, maybe at the levels that we've read about or seen in these proposals. So what our staff has been working on, Mike Mielke on my team in particular, is carbon pricing and looking at how carbon taxes or how a carbon tax can offset the cost of a large package like this of such critical infrastructure with so many components that we support. So we're working very hard, have been over the past several months, extremely hard actually today and over the next few weeks, trying to share this information with key decision makers and conference negotiators in Congress, because we believe, or we hope, that carbon tax and this offset solution might be the linchpin that unlocks the pay for solution to move this very important larger piece of legislation, this larger package forward. So that's a little bit high level, I guess, on what we see as the most critical issue this week that my staff is working on. Closer to home, the rising coastal waters, drought, wildfires are all hugely important to us. When we talk about bay restoration, and in particular, the Measure AA back from 2016, which was something that our team and Carl played such a big part of, we continue working very hard to secure matching funds at the state and federal level to raise $1.5 billion to pay for that green infrastructure that's so desperately needed. I personally, maybe to close, I would say, I want to engage with you all around how we can bring innovative private sector solutions to the fore. We know that there's a multi-trillion-dollar movement around ESG with our large institutions. I led, as an investment banker, the first ever social bond in California, first ever social bond in America for a nonprofit that we placed in the municipal market. That's a multi-trillion-dollar market. And I believe we have the potential, between our legislators who are very supportive, between our companies who want to be forward thinking, between municipalities who've got a suite of climate mitigation related projects that need to be funded. I think we've got the potential to synergize and do some things that are very special there. With that, I would close. I'd just say a huge thank you for having me. I hope this is helpful. I tried to shape it around more of the federal stuff, given what you all covered at the state level. My contact info will be shared. More than anything, I hope to leave this being in a position to work more closely with you all on a personal level, and hope we'll be in very close contact in the months and years ahead. So thank you, Doran, and thank you, Barry. I really appreciate the opportunity this morning.
Well, thank you, Ahmad. Thank you for your excellent remarks. And absolutely, I want to echo what you just said. Let's work more closely together. For all of you who are here from all the various businesses, both in the North Bay and throughout California. You all know that by working together in coalition and in partnership, that's how we're going to get the changes that we need, both for our climate and for our economy. So let's keep the conversation going, Ahmad. I look forward to it. I just want to remind everybody that when we're done with our speakers, we will have some time for our peer-to-peer sharing. That's our sort of our networking part of the event. I will start with those members who are here. So folks like you, Jeff Mathias and Jason, I'll be calling on you folks to give a quick minute update, Christine Bennett and others who are members. If you're not a member and you're interested in getting a minute to talk a little bit about what's going on at your company, please drop that in the chat and I'll do my best to fit everybody in, time permitting. And in the spirit of hearing from our members, I'd like to turn now to Aaron Steinthorpe of Jackson Family Wines. He's going to take a few minutes to give us what we call our member spotlight, a slightly more in-depth look at one of our member companies, in this case, Jackson Family Wines. Aaron is the sustainability manager at Jackson Family Wines, as well as a member of the board of the Climate Center. He's also a father, a husband, and all around cool guy. So Aaron, I turn the floor to you. What's going on at Jackson?
Great. Well, thank you for that introduction. Very kind. And I just want to say this is an amazing community to be a part of. Just when we think about the climate leadership that's happening via the Climate Center and all of the business and private sector that's engaged around this, it makes me feel very inspired. So I will give a few remarks. I'm going to keep it pretty brief because I know that there's a lot planned for this breakfast. But at Jackson Family Wines, hopefully many people are familiar. If you're not, we're a family-owned and operated wine company. We farm about 13,000 acres of vineyard and have about 25 active wineries. And so in the marketplace, brands like Kendall Jackson Chardonnay, which has been America's #1 Chardonnay the last 25 years, or La Crema, or many other brands like that that you might see either in your grocery store or be able to get kind of at some of our wineries. That's what we produce. That's who we are as a company. And I think when you talk about why are we here, like how are we connected to the climate, I think climate change for us, as probably many people here, is very much an existential crisis, right? So I think all of us are trying to figure out how we deal with a warming world, a weirder world, all of the uncertainty. But I think grapes, when we talk about terroir, like the climate is such a huge factor in all those actual flavors that come out. So for us, like the core of what we do is very much threatened by climate change. And so that's why the Jackson family has really invested in taking a leadership approach on climate change. And so we're gonna have some pretty exciting announcements coming out next month. In August, we're gonna be doing some big sustainability launches, but I'll share that we have committed to become climate positive as an organization across scopes 1 through 3. So for those of you that are familiar, that's both our operations and our supply chain. We really want to look holistically at all of the ways we can then be a positive contributor to solutions to climate change. And that aligns with science-based targets for a pathway of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is really where we see more and more people gravitating to say, let's follow the science in developing our emission reduction targets because we need to accelerate action wherever possible. And so for us as a wine-based company, some of our key areas that we're reshaping our business are focusing on renewable energy. We're already the largest solar generator in the wine industry, but we're dramatically increasing renewable energy, focusing on packaging, product transport, zero emission vehicles, our procurement and spend, and then regenerative farming. And I'll mention regenerative farming, and I'm speaking quick, but these are all really powerful concepts. Regenerative farming has the possibility to unlock sequestration opportunities for natural and working lands. And that's something the Climate Center has really pushed on. It's going to be a huge lever as we start thinking about not just how we decarbonize, but also how we use nature-based solutions to actually have plants what they do best, right? It's simple and complicated at the same time, and it's amazing. And if we do it right, we can really use our farms, use our ranchers as climate heroes and advocates in this. But I think when I talk about all of that, and I'm really proud of the work we're doing at Jackson Family Wines, if we do this alone, it doesn't make as much of an impact as if we do this together. And so in 2019, Jackson Family co-founded International Wineries for Climate Action with Torres family, or Familia Torres, which is a wine company based out of Spain. And we've been growing International Wineries for Climate Action because we need more wineries to be taking this same proactive approach to managing their own greenhouse gas emission, working on decarbonize, and then using our voice to really drive action throughout the industry and even outside of our industry. So I think that's something that I'm very proud of, like our role, and then building an industry specific group. And then when I think about the work that the Climate Center is leading, that's doing the same thing at the state level. And I think when we think about the influence California has both in the US and the world, when we make policy change here, that ripple effect has really global implications. So I think Jackson Family Wines is very proud to be a member at the Climate Center and a sponsor. And I'm thrilled with really the work that the Climate Center is leading, because I just think we all know this, but climate change is not something any of us can win or solve on our own. It is really this team group effort. All of these issues are immensely complicated and tricky to figure out. But, you know, when I think about what makes me inspired, and just hearing, you know, about the remarks from Senator Kerry, there is so much opportunity here that if we do this right, we can actually address environmental justice. We can actually look at innovation. We can actually look at building the future that we want. So I'll close there, but, you know, again, I think it's really exciting just when we think about, you know, the Breakfast for Clean Energy. There's so many smart people working on ambitious plans here. And I think the Climate Center is just a node for really bringing together action and innovation in this space. So I'd be happy to connect with others. And, you know, I just want to applaud everybody for the work that they're doing, because it really is inspirational, the path that we're headed.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and thank you for all the good work you guys are doing at Jackson Family Wines. And I think it's sort of one of the things I really want to pull from what you said is the value of working together and collaboration in the same way that Ahmad talked about. You know, like this is all of our climate, it's all of our planet, and it's all of our shared economy also. So I want to just take a moment, as you did, to thank all the people who are here for everything you do within your own companies and your own communities to advance our common goals. So with that, thanks to Aaron and thanks to Ahmad for your comments. And I'm now happy to turn to our keynote speaker for the day. And remember, after this, we'll have a chance for all of you to share some updates for your company. So be prepared for that. But before that, we've got a really exciting opportunity to hear about climate priorities in a time of budget surplus from Dr. Somjita Mitra, who is the chief economist at the California Department of Finance. Dr. Mitra has a long list of degrees, which conclude with a Ph.D. in economics from Claremont University. And you know, Somjita has many interests, including animal welfare, mentoring young college students. But as chief economist, I think she's had a lot of light to shed on what we're talking about. Dr. Mitra, we're very interested to hear your remarks. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Doran. And thank you everyone for inviting me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Okay, can everybody see this? Great. So as Doran mentioned, I'm talking about climate priorities in a time of budget surplus. But before I do that, I want to take a step back and kind of talk about the economic outlook. Obviously, because as the economy goes, that's where we have our priorities in terms of how much money we actually have in our state's budget. And so the stronger our economy is, the more we can focus on some of these other issues that really impact not just the state, not just the nation, but the rest of the world as well. So, you know, over the past year, we've been, you know, kind of dealing with the COVID-19 world, the COVID-19 impact on our economy. And so now we are actually in, as Doran mentioned at the very beginning, we are kind of looking at the post-COVID world and so regaining this ground that we kind of lost last year after this unprecedented contraction that was from both a demand side and a supply side, as we kind of dealt with this enormous and unprecedented public health crisis. So if you had asked me to speak last year in January, things were looking really good for us. We had over 10 years of economic expansion. Our unemployment rate in California had fallen from a high of 12.7% during the Great Recession to 4.2% unemployment rate. And generally 3 to 5% is considered about a full unemployment rate, which means anybody in the state that wants a job has a job. And so we were looking at 118 months of consecutive job growth, and 1 out of 7 new jobs that were created in the US since the Great Recession were actually created in California through businesses like yours. And we also saw that our GDP was growing pretty healthy at a 3.9% average rate over the previous 5 years. So January, before COVID hit, we were looking really good. And then just a couple months later, the world kind of stopped for everybody, right? We had everything changed for us. So we went from a low of 4.2% unemployment to a peak of 16% unemployment in May 2020, which is the highest in California since the Great Depression. The US GDP, instead of growing at 3.9% annualized, we contracted to 31.5%, which is the largest contraction in our history since the Great Depression in the 1930s. And when we said 1 out of every 7 jobs were created, California, we actually lost 1 out of every 6 jobs just in that 3-month period. And this is what's important because our budget when we went from a $5.6 billion surplus in January in the governor's budget to a $54.3 billion projected deficit in the May revision of 2020. Now, the deficit, if we had that means all our priorities have to shift at that point. We're just kind of holding base, just trying to hang on until we get back into an economic recovery. So things were looking really kind of bleak last year. So we had over a year of a global pandemic. And, I don't have to tell any of you about how it's impacted your businesses or the economy or the state or the country. But one thing I did want to point out is that this actually showed us our human ingenuity and our ability to shift focus in a relatively short amount of time. We went from not wearing masks out to making it more acceptable. We went from not social distancing to social. So people's behavior changed in a really short amount of time. And although, unfortunately, this was due to a global pandemic, it kind of gave me some hope that we can make some changes in our behaviors to deal with other issues in our economy, in our country, climate change being one of them. Like, we can make the changes that we need to do. We have the wherewithal to do it. So I think, if there was a silver lining to COVID, it kind of showed how our ability to kind of change our behavior. So now fast forward to the May revision 2021, and things are looking a lot better for us. So since the height of the Great Recession in April 2020 and a full year into the recovery into April 2021, we added back 2/3 of the jobs we had lost in the nation. We had lost 14 million jobs in the country at that time. So our priorities at that time kind of was shifting to taking care of the people, right? And although we've made some great strides in our recovery, we're still, we have about 6% fewer jobs still in the US and 9% fewer jobs in California than we did pre-recession. So we still have a lot of ways to grow and grounds to rate in the recovery. But the May revision 2020, there are some opportunities in there. We went from a projected budget deficit, like I mentioned, of over 54 billion. We now have a $75.7 billion surplus, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Combined with over $25 billion in federal relief, this supports the $100 billion California comeback plan. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to not only speed our economic recovery from the pandemic, but to address some longstanding structural issues in our country and provide opportunities. So the US GDP, we're now forecasting, instead of contracting, we then recovered in the next quarter to 33.1%. And we expect that our GDP is going to recover to this quarter, actually, 2021 Q2, this past quarter. So that's how fast. We had an unprecedented contraction in our GDP, and we've accelerated our growth back. So which means now we have resources and the ability to think about these other issues. And we don't have to just kind of worry constantly about the economic recovery, kind of on track to our the trajectory of our recovery. So the GDP has recovered. Full employment is going to take a little bit longer, just a couple more years. And this is because the employment generally lags our GDP growth. Businesses tend to be a little bit more productive. And so, you know, you can see here, the California's unemployment rate is a little bit higher than the US as a whole. And this, although they follow the same trajectory, and this is because there's a little bit more churn in the California labor market. People tend to go in and out of the labor market a little bit more here. People tend to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, and we also have a lot of our sectors are not annual. You know, there's agriculture, there's leisure and hospitality, and those jobs tend to be more part-time and for a few periods of the year. So our recovery from the GDP, we've already going to recover from this in last quarter, but our unemployment is going to take just a couple more years, and we expect it to recover to where we were pre-pandemic by 2024. Now, this looks at our the last few recessions and how fast it took us to recover. So you can see the thick black line is our May revision. And it kind of looks like the Nike V-shaped recovery. It's going to be the fastest recovery we've had in our recessions in the last 3 decades, which is great news. You know, our Great Recession, which a lot of us had thought was going to be the worst recession we were going to see in our lifetimes, it took us 7 years to recover. And in the May revision, we're going to take about 3 years, California job losses. So this is good because that means that, you know, we're going to snap back, and then we can kind of focus on some of these big structural issues that are affecting our existence. The one thing that is going to lag, and I don't think it's going to surprise any of you, is that high wage jobs, generally during the recession, we were insulated from the impacts of the COVID. These jobs were able to pivot to teleworking, virtual work. A lot of the low wage jobs tended to be public facing, service sector jobs, and those were the jobs that were lost. And it's going to take a little bit longer for them to recover versus our high wage sectors. And, you know, Californians now are fortunately doing a lot better than we were during the Great Recession. You can see the purple is our transfer receipts. In 2020, we had the largest transfers with those stimulus packages, which is going to, in 2021, there's a little bit more. 2022, we expect that to change. Obviously, we're not going to expect the same level of stimulus and support payments. And so we are forecasting our personal income to grow. Despite that, we're expecting personal income to grow. A lot of it was really pulled up by the wage increases in the high wage sectors, which was kind of, you know, in this recession doesn't really follow patterns of other recessions. But we did see that because high wage sectors were insulated, they were more productive, they ended up seeing a lot of wage growth. And that really drives a lot of the personal income. High wage workers tend to pay the taxes. We have a progressive tax system in California, and they're the ones who kind of pay more into their system. And so that's good news for the rest of us. You know, one of the things with California is housing. I don't have to tell you how expensive housing is in California. And we have a critical housing shortage. By some estimates, we would need to build about 500,000 units a year just to catch up to where we should be. We're nowhere near that. We are expecting a little bit of a shift for the past few years. We've seen some growth in the multifamily units just because of a lot of the housings was concentrated in job centers, the cities, urban areas. But due to the pandemic, now we're seeing a shift back to single family units as people try to spread out. People who are teleworking can move out of high cost centers and move throughout the state. So we are seeing some shifts in that. So we're looking at that as well because, you know, Californians, we have to make a decision of whether people in California can afford to live here. And so this is really an important and critical issue for us as well. Again, as I mentioned, this recession doesn't follow other previous recessions. This wasn't a housing recession crisis, as was the Great Recession. Actually, housing prices have hit record highs and continue to hit record highs for us. Again, May 2007, right before the Great Recession, our housing prices was about 595,000. February 2020, right before the right before the COVID-19 recession hit, we were at about 580,000. And in May 2021, we hit 818,000 for existing single family homes. So I said in the previous slide, we're building, but who's going to be able to afford these housing prices, house prices? Where are average Californians going to live? There are some really big structural issues that we have to kind of contend with, along with the other issues that we're dealing with, climate change being maybe the most critical one of all. The S&P 500 continues to hit record highs, despite it recovered during last March. It fell and it recovered and exceeded its previous record high within 4 months. And during the Great Recession, it took 2.5 years for it to recover to its previous high. And so what this tells us is that investors tend to be forward-looking, tend to be a little bit more progressive, and they are really confident in our economic recovery. And this is important for the state's budget because a lot of our investors, high income earners that pay the taxes, all of that goes into the S&P 500 investments. And so that's an important thing for us to kind of track. But again, it doesn't follow other economic recessions. So the risks to our outlook, things are looking really well for us now, with the caveat that we're still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So public health concerns are still continuing to be a risk, the new variants that are coming out, people that are not getting vaccinated. So these things are a worry, public health concerns. The issue of high inflation, if that's going to be sustained, the Federal Reserve thinks this is going to go back as the supply chain eases. We had a huge shock to the market as things reopened. We got an inflation boost. We all kind of expect that to kind of ease over the next couple of months, but we'll see if it's going to be sustained or not. Labor market reentry barriers, there's been some challenges there. Again, a stock market correction, if we think that's going to be an issue for us. Climate change, drought, wildfire, these are all risks to our outlook. Housing shortage, the continued and exacerbated inequality in our state, and demographic challenges. We are seeing people leave California. We are seeing generally California's population is kind of sustained by international immigration, and that's kind of stopped over the last couple of years. So we are dealing with some demographic challenges as well. And you've heard of issues in the news that might affect our economy, inflation, labor shortage, anything like that. We are monitoring because a strong and thriving economy is what's going to help us have the resources to kind of contribute to some of these other issues that we're dealing with, including the climate. Climate issues, I don't have to tell you any of this. It's becoming more and more prevalent for us. It's becoming worse. We're dealing with once in a lifetime issues all the time in unprecedented places. There was a 70 million ton raw sewage was leaked into the Southern California beaches. I just read a news that the Sacramento River is so hot now that the salmon is going to be dying, which has environmental and animal impacts as well, and not just for people. So there are significant issues. And so in the May revision to the governor's budget, I want to talk a little bit about these climate priorities. And there's a lot that the governor's budget and the May revision is planning to focus on and distribute resources to kind of address some of these ongoing challenges that we're going to be having. So again, we now have a historic budget surplus. We have a $100 billion surplus in the California Comeback Plan. This includes the May revision surplus of about $76 billion and a federal relief of $25 billion. And in this budget goals, there's a lot of infrastructure spending to deal with our drought issues, water, sustainable agriculture, zero emission transportation, which we touched upon at the beginning of this meeting, climate resilience, and environmental justice. So our climate change, we're focusing on resiliency and infrastructure, water and drought. We are in a drought now. I believe most of every county, this is going to be, we're in the third year of our drought. Wildfires continue. Last year was the worst wildfire season in California's history. We're just starting to see wildfires now, and not just in California, but in Oregon and Washington, and we're not insulated from those impacts as well. Sea level, a lot of our coastline, and so a lot of our industries might be affected by this. Government, of course, construction, forestry, and logging, agriculture, and manufacturing. So our economic health also depends on us being able to address these issues. And so there's going to be an about $11.8 billion investment to address over the next several years to address our water supply, address wildfires, address rising heat, temperature, and of course, sea level rises. We're focusing on safe drinking water, especially for vulnerable populations, building our water supply reliability, improving flood protection, which we still have to deal with even in a drought, providing immediate drought support to affected individuals, also looking at improving our data collection and monitoring of these situations, and restoring and improving the fish and wildlife habitat. As I just mentioned, we don't want our salmon to die. And then focusing on fire, resilient fires, forests and landscapes, community hardening, science-based management is a must for us. And the forest sector economic stimulus is also something that's being planned in this. And the climate resilience is another program in dealing with community resilience and other issues as well. And then of course, the zero emission vehicle acceleration, there's going to be investments made in infrastructure, manufacturing, strategy implementation, and adoption. And from an economic perspective, there is economic potential in investing and shifting our industry focus from pollution orientated vehicles like diesel to zero emission vehicles, and transitioning the workforce out of that into these new opportunities in this new sector. And then energy as well, we're focusing on clean energy build out, storage of energy, energy efficiency, reducing our energy use in food production and agriculture, offshore wind energy, and green hydrogen production. So there's a lot that we're doing in the budget that's really kind of exciting and innovative, and it's going to really help us, take the lead and kind of, address these challenges instead of kind of like throwing our hands up and saying, what are we going to do? There's a lot we can do. Natural resources, we're kind of focusing on equity and conservation. Outdoor access for all. This is, equity is a huge focus for the California, our legislators, as well as our administration. Enhancing and restoring the California's state park system, funding the Department of Fish and Wildlife to protect species and preserve our state lands. And, increasing education, in protecting the heritage center and investment in protecting our endangered species. So there's a lot that we're doing that's kind of proactive on the natural resources side as well. And environmental protection, focusing on our community and opportunity. And this includes $8.8 billion for related programs that really have some environmental impact, including contaminated site cleanups, pesticide notifications and protections, waste reduction and recycling. And this also includes a one-time spending of $6 million for improving governance and transparency that will address our workload gaps. Again, that's an economic opportunity for the state. We're still below where we were in employment level. So this looks at somehow we can kind of bring people back into the workforce. Increasing accountability for inspections of hazardous materials and maintenance with federal regulations. We have $500 million allocated, like I said, for contaminated site buildups and accelerating those cleanups because that needs to be done as well. $10 million one time to implement a statewide infrastructure network for equitable access to information about local pesticides. And also $130 million general fund to support the development of infrastructure related to recyclables and manufacturing products from recyclable materials. Historically, California has shipped all our recyclables out of the country, and that also negatively impacts the global carbon footprint. And so this is where we can kind of keep it in-house and take a leadership role instead of just, shoving it up and making it somebody else's problem, especially poorer nations. We can really take a leadership role and generate the feedstock that we think is going to attract manufacturing companies back to California in this leadership role. There's going to be grants, 220 million across several programs to expand waste and recycling infrastructure. There's a program for edible food recovery, composting opportunities. And we believe with these investments, California is going to create these jobs and make measurable progress towards our climate and recycling goals, and leading the world in building robust markets for these recycled commodities, and early investments in the infrastructures, industries, and companies that are innovating new and clean technology. So the budget really is kind of exciting for us. Just a couple days ago, the governor announced the California $100 billion comeback plan that I touched on a little bit, and he signed SB 129. This includes the largest economic recovery package in California's history. And so, again, really quickly, the one thing I wanted to note is our budget, the California's budget, is a reflection of our priorities, what we consider to be important in California. And as you can tell, the budget, climate is critically important in our budget. And so it's very exciting that, we're reflecting our priorities, we're reflecting our values, we're reflecting where we want California to grow in the future. So we have 11.8 billion in climate mitigation and adaptation, small business support, 1.5 billion, $20 billion to support preschool education system, and $12 billion to alleviate homelessness. Again, in the climate priority, we're also allocating $2 billion for emergency preparedness. It's been several years since we've talked about the big one, the earthquake. Just a matter of time that might be coming. That's something else we have to deal with in California. 3.9 billion for zero emissions vehicle goals, 3.7 billion to prepare for extreme heat, sea level rise, and environmental justice priorities, 5.1 billion for drought support, water supply, natural habitat restoration, and building really a 22nd century electric grid. And so all of this is kind of showing where we are going in the future. We're trying to build a cleaner, more resilient economy and a cleaner, more resilient environment for all of us to grow and thrive in. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mitra. That's great. We really appreciate your excellent presentation and all the details that you provided us. We've got a couple of questions, and we want to move to our member sharing. But before we do that, I would just like to take a couple of minutes for folks to ask a couple of questions. And one of them is a pretty straightforward question, comes from Tor Allen. Where can people go to get more details on all of these plans and programs? What's a good source for a little granular information?
Sure. So if you want to know the budget, all of it is detailed in the ebudget.ca.gov website, and that's throughout all the past years. You can look at all the budgets. It's recently passed. So you can, there's several chapters on environmental preparation, climate change, and all of that. So it'll detail, I have it, I don't know if you can see, can't see with my background, but it details all the money that's allocated to the different programs, and you can search for it and look for what's being allocated to each program step by step. It's all outlined in there. So ebudget.ca.gov.
Right, and I noticed that that Tor did just drop a link to that into the chat for anybody who wants it. So thank you, Tor. Gary Gerber, Sunlight and Power, you had a question. I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask it yourself. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So many of you probably know that there's a big fight going on with the Public Utilities Commission over the valuation of rooftop solar systems and the ability of people to, cost effectively purchase systems for their own homes rather than just relying on large scale utility with all the transmission and distribution costs that go with that. And it's been hard to read the governor on whether he is supportive of our efforts to save rooftop solar. I just wonder if you have any insights.
I'm not sure about that specific aspect of that, but I can find that out for you and I can let Doran know.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Very important issue. Thank you, Gary. I know that's important to a lot of our members as well. I wanted to make sure we highlighted that issue. We have one more question from Barry. Barry, you had one, I think a really kind of great question to kind of wrap things up with Dr. Mitra here. Would you go ahead and turn on your microphone and share your thoughts and give Dr. Mitra a chance to respond?
Sure. And thank you so much for your excellent presentation, Dr. Mitra. So this is a historic budget allocation for California this year for climate, and we're of course grateful for that. We've done some work at the Climate Center estimating what we think it would cost to get to net negative emissions by 2030 in terms of public investment. And we're coming in at around $20 billion a year. There have been other studies that have actually had larger amounts for less ambitious targets. So my question to you is there planning at the state to address that level of investment sustained over a substantial period of time? Because obviously that's a huge lift compared to what we're doing right now, even in this time of budget surplus.
Yeah, so a lot of this is like one-time investments. We have this once in a lifetime opportunity to kind of make some structural investments to kind of address this. What that means moving forward, unfortunately, it's a 3-year cycle for the budget. Beyond that window, it's really hard because that's why I kind of talked about the economy at the beginning. That kind of feeds into the revenues, that kind of feeds into the budget. So in terms of ongoing investments in infrastructure, I think I've shown that the climate is a priority for the administration and the legislators. And so we are hoping to continue to kind of invest and take that leadership role. And hopefully the things that we're doing now to kind of set the stage, maybe in the future, we won't have to make those insignificant investments. We can kind of like build upon that. So that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to thank you again, Dr. Mitra, for not only taking the time to be here today, but for the work that you do in Sacramento to help advance these priorities. It's all super critical. As we all know, the challenge is huge, and it's going to take investments not just from the public sector. It's also going to take investment and innovation from the private sector. And that's one of the reasons why we have this network of business leaders, and the Climate Center's business network is all about, bringing people together to talk about what's working, what the challenges are. And in that spirit, I'd like to take about 20 minutes to hear from some of our members and guests. And Jeff Mathias, I see you're with us. You've been a longstanding member. If you wouldn't mind, perhaps you could start and tell us a little bit about what's happening at Synergy Solar and give us a little update on what some of the successes and challenges you're facing at this time.
Sure, thanks, Duran. So at Synergy, my business partner Mike's on here too. We've pretty much taken a focus on combining solar and storage. We're not selling solar by itself anymore, with the primary goal of minimizing transmission distribution, also focusing on customer protection and really self-consumption for our customers, as well as resiliency during the fires. We're also working with our partners over at Sonoma Clean Power, dealing with things like virtual power plants for the future, so we can get away from these gas-powered peaker plants. We're coming up with some creative financing with our partners over at Sonoma Clean Power, and we're also working with Sonoma County Energy Independence Program. We're also working with our customers to electrify their homes, trying to get the electrification of the grid, going to heat pumps and mini splits away from natural gas and propane. I think the biggest challenge we have is regarding some of the rebate programs that have been in the battery world. They tend to come and go very quickly. I know there's a few people on this call that have been affected by that, and they start and stop. And so for the people that are on here from the state of California, if we get a long-term battery incentive rebate program that is consistent, that it really allows us to start and continue forward in that world, as opposed to starting and stopping constantly and unable to really project it forward. That's it.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Well modeled, 1 minute. It's what we're looking for. Successes and challenges. That's really well done, and certainly more consistent rebates on battery programs. Very, very, very critical. We all know how important storage is. Otherwise, all the solar in the world is not going to get us out of this mess. I would like to turn now to you, Jason Simon from Enphase, as we work our way through some of our members. What can you tell us about what's happening at Enphase?
Sure. So thanks very much for hosting this business breakfast. This is fantastic. And Dr. Mitra, really appreciate your time today. Enphase Energy, for those that don't know, I think at this point, we're the market share leader in providing inverters and other technologies that enable energy resiliency to the home at the residential and the small commercial level. I really echoing what people are saying here today. We're really interested in really informing the state on how it is that we have the discussion about localizing energy generation for meeting the energy reliability and resiliency needs for the state today. The conversation we see happening in Washington and even in the state of California, given the comments on the CPUC this morning, are that, you know, a lot of the focus is on big transmission. And just to remind everybody on the call today, building big transmission helps utility companies, but it doesn't help local communities. And where we have issues in Texas last year, we have the same issues on the Oregon-California border over the weekend, where the transmission lines were compromised. Obviously, compromising the integrity of the energy generation to local communities in California. Obviously, we saw what happened with transmission lines with Paradise a number of years ago. So transmission is not the way to promote and provide reliability to vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. And really, I think that the big takeaway today, I think for Dr. Mitra there needs to be within the budget a way for us to communicate the need to provide local and reliable energy through the utilization of solar and storage, intelligent solar and storage, which everybody provides on this call today, to meet the needs to provide for environmental justice, social equity, and to provide for reliability to these communities that are just getting crushed right now, specifically in the northern parts of California, southern parts and in the Central Valley.
Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you for the work you do there at Enphase. I'm going to stick with some of our renewable energy folks here. I'd like to turn to you, Artie, from Renewable America. Can you give us a little update? Tell us just really quickly what it is that you guys do and what are some of your successes and challenges that you're facing right now?
Thank you, Daron, and thanks for all the great work that the Climate Center is doing. Yes, it's great to be with all of you, and I'd like to give a brief update about what Renewable America is at the moment busy with. We have about 21 locations through all over California identified and gained site control with different landowners. And the intention is that we look for existing PSPS events on the distribution line and try to find a way for community microgrid. And we're working closely with PG&E and see a good support there on their community microgrid enabling team, so-called CMAP. Now, one of the challenges that we have not fully resolved as of today is how can we incentivize the energy storage throughout the blue sky without any outage, nothing on the lines, no issues. This is something that is a little bit challenging, especially when you are on the distribution and you are just an energy only and not having that specific deliverability status on CAISO level. So yeah, we are looking for support and working with a couple of experts at the moment and have different conversations with CCAs. And hopefully we are capable of providing some of those our projects as a community microgrid solution. That's what is our target. If anyone has any thoughts or can provide any support, please reach out to us. We are happy to work together.
Thank you, Artie. Really appreciate you being here, being a part of our community of businesses and innovators. I'm going to turn to a couple other folks, Dana, and then Erica, if you're available. I'd like to hear from Sonoma Clean Power, but first, let's hear from Solarcraft as we continue along this little journey. Dana Smith, what's going on with you guys? What can you tell us about Solarcraft?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning. Hi, everybody. So Solarcraft, longtime, large Bay Area solar installer, super busy over the last year. Solar remained busy through COVID, but everything was harder, of course. Sheltered in place. We had permit techs working from home. PG&E was slow. Now we have, construction supply constraints. So, we're just head down, working hard, and luckily busy, but everything's kind of harder than it was. I want to piggyback on something Gary Gerber said. So a lot of people just assume, California is the solar state, the golden state, and it's just going to happen. But there's some things going on with NEM 3.0 and even some more recent bills where, changing who can install batteries that are pretty scary. And if it's not on your radar, tobacco companies for decades got away with convincing people that, smoking didn't cause cancer because they would pay for research studies and things that went in their favor. And the big utilities have really lined up their kind of ducks in a row. They have white papers and calculators and really have come in. And in some way, to oversimplify something that's super complicated, is the messaging is, if you're going solar, you're leaving the poor people behind that have to, bear the brunt of paying the grid and the prices. And if you, as a politician, if you vote for solar, you're voting against poor people. And unfortunately, that message is coming across where some politicians who before would just rubber stamp solar as a good thing are like, well, maybe we better look at it. Maybe we better revisit it. And it's kind of scary. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to happen to get back to net zero. But solar has been a big chunk of that, and the rules may change next year if people aren't paying attention. So anyway, I'm jumping off, but just pay attention. NEM 3.0 and a couple other things are super scary for solar right now.
Well, thank you so much. Certainly rest assured that we'll be doing everything we can in Sacramento to make sure that solar remains a key part of our energy mix moving forward, and more solar is what we need, together with storage and all the rest. And a big part of that is our CCA community. And so I'm very happy to have Erica here from Sonoma Clean Power. Tell us a little bit, Erica, what's going on with you guys? I'm going to call, by the way, on Lisa Moore next from Recology, just giving you a heads up. But Erica, the floor is yours for a minute. Tell us what you got.
Oh, we are so excited at Sonoma Clean Power. If you have not had a chance, please come check out our Advanced Energy Center. It is on in Santa Rosa downtown on 4th Street. It's the old Stan Roy Music. We have all the great appliances. We want to use the solar that people are creating on their roof, and rather than trying to sell it back to the grid, use it themselves. So we have heat pump water heaters, heat pump HVAC, we have induction cooking, and it's all on display for you to go touch, learn about, get a tour of. So please come check us out. As Jeff said, we also have on-bill financing at 0%. It's very, very easy, just a simple application. So we really want you guys who are leaders in this community to come and check out the center so you can tell your networks to come check out the center. Again, it's at 741 4th Street in Santa Rosa. You can also check us out online at scpadvancedenergycenter.org. So thank you.
Thank you, Erica. And I've heard from a couple of people who visited the Advanced Energy Center. I look forward to doing that myself. We talked to Nathan. Perhaps sometime in the future, we can have one of these breakfasts at the Advanced Energy Center, which would be a fantastic way to bring all these people together in a physical space. So as we look forward to post-COVID, I look forward to visiting your space and hopefully bringing us all together there at some point. So thank you very much. All right, thank you. Awesome. So we're kind of moving away from energy and into some of the other sectors. Christine, you're on deck, FYI, but Lisa, we'd love to hear from Recology. What's going on in waste and recycling? What can you tell us about what's happening?
So Lisa Moore from Recology Sonoma Marin, I'm waste zero specialist in my territory is Petaluma. So what we're gearing up for this year is SB 1383 was just finalized. And so that is basically every commercial property will have to have compost or some kind of waiver. So that's exciting. Recology is gearing up to, as in everybody has recycling, everybody's going to have compost. So a lot of education going on for businesses, a lot of education going on for the community regarding composting. And as people are starting to open back up, we're very busy as a company because we're starting services again and educating folks on a lot of new businesses that are going in, educating on recycling and composting. So an exciting time for Recology, a lot of activity. So yeah, so we're excited to be in the community.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and we really appreciate the support Recology has always shown, not just to the Climate Center, but to our community more broadly, and we appreciate all the work you do. I'm personally a passionate composter, so I'm a big fan of turning waste into gold. So a big part of natural sequestration too. I'm happy to welcome Christine Bennett, Cleantech Communications. You've got perhaps a broader view. You work with a lot of different companies in this space. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on in your world and what you think some of the challenges might be moving forward.
Yeah, happy to. And as always, thank you so much for hosting this amazing breakfast for everybody. And thank you again to our amazing speakers. So yeah, so Cleantech Communication, we are a consultancy focused on marketing, communication, and public relations in the entire clean tech space. So that spans from generation and storage to mobility, to financing projects, smart buildings, really the full gamut of the clean tech / now climate tech investment space. And what I've been seeing lately, clearly huge uptick in the clean mobility sector, getting a lot of incoming interest from folks, really innovative approaches to how do we really get more, even more distributed intelligence across the EV charging infrastructure? How do we integrate that more into every building, every commercial property, right? So really thinking pretty holistically about charging intelligently, as well as charging renewably. So seeing a lot of energy as a service providers, a lot of pickup there. Let's build microgrids to power EVs. So really a lot of cool stuff going on in that space. And I think importantly too, with some of the infrastructure, programs introduced by Biden, a lot of interest in this sort of cracking the nut on this small to medium commercial property space for renewables and resiliency and sustainability. A lot of innovations in financing happening for this space. As we know, what the revolution we saw in the residential space with financing, looking to replicate that in the small to medium commercial space, where it's not as simple as just running someone's credit. It's much more complicated and complex than that. And today, there's really only about 10% or so of companies that qualify for certain financing in the commercial space. But what we're seeing is, as these larger companies like the Targets, the Walmarts, right, they're looking at their entire supply chain now, and they're looking at ESG reporting coming to that pike. So they're thinking, okay, all these more suppliers are starting to really look at how they can clean up their properties as well. So exciting times, I would say. And on that, I'm going to put on my client's hat for a moment, Blue Planet Energy. They are also really trying to tackle this commercial space and have introduced a zero down financing mechanism for a clean energy microgrid in California for businesses. So we don't need to wait for anybody else. If you're a business and you want to do this yourself, you can do it with no capital outlay and start having resilient energy on your property today. So exciting to see all the innovations coming down the pipe, regardless of what's happening at the political and utility level, knowing that there are options out there.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you for speaking on behalf of Cleantech and Blue Planet Energy. Really appreciate that. We do have some guests here. I'm hoping to squeeze some of them. And before that, I'd like to just turn to any members that are still here. Ken Roberts, I thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to hear just really briefly how you're doing and what's up with Financial Pathways. If you have a moment, if you could share a quick update with us, that would be great. I think you're looking for your mute button. There you go.
I got it. I'm real interested to see what's going to come out at the federal and state level in respect to tax and other incentives for energy conservation, energy production. I'm also very eager perhaps to have one of these events that focuses for households and very small businesses on the integration of rooftop solar, microgrid, storage, building codes, and other elements that we face in trying to upgrade our own situations. It's mostly what I have to say. I hope y'all can pull that off, find some good teachers for us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ken. We will take that and put that in our pockets and see what we can do about that. I mean, I think we're always looking to serve our members. That's part of what we're here for, is to provide you with what you want and you need. So thanks. So we've got just a couple more minutes, but a couple of guests have raised their hands. Janice Granvold used to work with us here in Sonoma County, native of Santa Rosa, if I'm not mistaken. Janice, what are you up to now? Thanks so much for being here. Tell us about EOS.
Hi, Doran, thank you. Great to see all these familiar faces. Hello, everybody. Since we last spoke, I have moved out to Charlotte, North Carolina, worked with Sonnen Energy for a while, and I'm currently actually with EOS Battery now. Actually reached out to a handful of you on the comments already and look forward to continuing. Oh, sorry, can you not hear me all?
We can hear you, but it's kind of weird audio.
Yeah, a little broken up.
Is this better? Sorry, I have a phone issue.
Yeah.
That is better.
All right, very good. I'll
Thank you.
hold my phone up. Hello, everybody. Great to see you again. The updates that I was saying is since we've all spoken last, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Was working with Sonnen Battery for a while and moved over to EOS Battery. And I'm working at the commercial, industrial, and grid level out here. Sorry for the audio issues. I'll cut it really short, but I've reached out to a handful of you already over the chat. It's really good to see everybody else, and let's get back in contact. I'm working on getting us as a sponsor of this great group, and great to see everybody.
Thank you so much, Janice, and let's keep in touch. I do want to call on a couple of our other guests, Liz and Alon. So I'll call on you in that order. If there's anybody else who's got something pressing you want to say, please do send me a note in the chat. We're going to wrap right at 9:30. But Liz, we just talked. You work with a company called CCS. Do you want to give us just a quick minute on what you're thinking and what some of your successes and challenges are?
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to join you guys today. And I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. We had an emergency here. So I want to get more involved, but CCS is a facilities providing company. And we have a strong focus on sustainability as far as environmentally friendly products and processes. And of course, equity for all the people that that work for us, that we hire. And we are really, really kind of moving forward with innovations that are even more sustainable. So again, products, processes, and I'm just really excited to bring any knowledge that I learn here to our management and see if we can push forward with that. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us from beautiful Fresno, California. We really appreciate it. Excellent. Alon Duran, we not only, my first name is your last name, but we share more than that. We're very happy you could be here. Tell us very quickly about EVPS and what you might be interested in learning from this group.
Well, thank you, Dawn. And first of all, thank you for this wonderful gathering. As a newbie in the space, one of the things that's been very heartwarming is everybody coming to the table and interested in sharing. It feels like we're all working towards a single goal with future generations in mind. So thank you for the forum this morning. So I kind of got started in the space and basically as just as an integrator, as a systems integrator around the EV charging and electrification. But having chosen to work with an LX and making the rounds here in town, I've discovered a lot more than just commercial clients, and we're into projects with union work, and just everything is scaling up in a crazy way to tell us that this is the right thing in the right space, and again, it's important work. So what do we need? I don't know, just some more consistent programs to help flatten the line so we're not, as some mentioned, up and down with programs starting and stopping. But that's just what it is now. We're having a lot of fun and we're just happy to be in the space. So we're learning a lot. So thanks for the programs and let's keep putting them on. And a question to all, if you can raise your hands, who's going to Glasgow?
Like to.
Who is?
I think Barry responded.
I know that.
I will talk.
Yeah, I know that our CEO, Ellie, is very seriously thinking about it.
Okay, let's speak.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Alon. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Gina, also for coming. Hey, Gary Gerber, you used to be part of this group. Perhaps one last guest comment from you as we consider you perhaps rejoining in a formal way. We're really glad you could be here today. What's going on with Sunlight and Power?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I actually go way back with Ann in the very early years. I've been involved in this organization for a long time, but off and on. And Sunlight and Power continues to do mostly, you know, we're an integrator, design, install, and mostly multifamily affordable housing is really kind of our niche for those that don't know that. But we are also back into doing residential projects as well. So very interested in the comments about batteries. It's a huge issue for all of us. We absolutely need a good supply of affordable batteries, and we don't really have that. And so every time a customer comes to us and says, hey, we want batteries, and we say, well, can you wait a year? It kind of dampens the enthusiasm a bit. And so that's a real issue that needs to be tackled by the industry in general, and certainly by the support of the government as well. But yeah, so we just continue. We're still in Berkeley. I converted the company to an ESOP employee ownership in 2018. And so I'm no longer the sole owner, and feel good about that. It's working out well. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all your years of support. We really appreciate it. I really want to just take a moment again to thank everybody here. Barry, if you drop the link to Climate Safe California endorsements into the chat one more time. I know there are many of you who have endorsed Climate Safe California, but if you haven't, I really urge you to do that. As our founder and former chief strategist, Ann Hancock, likes to say, politicians are like sailboats. They don't go anywhere unless the wind is blowing. And our collective voice is the wind, right? We are the wind. So together, we can move that boat in the right direction. We can get the kinds of things we need, more consistent programs to support battery deployment, microgrids, the kinds of things that are going to support all of your companies and that are going to support all of our futures. I really want to just thank you all once again. Dr. Mitra, thank you so much for being here and sharing your perspective from Sacramento, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and Ahmad Thomas, thank you for being here and helping support this program. Thank you to all the companies who are members of the Climate Center's business network. And thank you all for everything you do every day to help us move towards a climate safe future. So for Jeff and for Christine and for Dana and for all of you, for Artie, I just want to thank you for being here and for working hard. We really hope that the next time we meet, it will be in person. For those of you who are joining us from other locations, we will continue to have programs available for folks throughout the state, both virtual and in person. But I'm really hoping that we can get together, shake hands, share coffee, eat bagels, and do what we do in a physical space sometime soon. So until then, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives to be here with us this morning. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to contact us. We're here for you. So thank you all very much. We hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time. And thanks again, Dr. Mitra. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care, Ken.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.